Part 1.
You'll hear a man renting an apartment over the phone. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 5. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 5.
Hello, how can I help you?
Hello, I want to rent an apartment. I saw your advertisement about two-bedroom apartment on Bridge Street.
Bridge Street 32, that's it?
Exactly. But I have a couple of questions.
Yes, I'm listening.
Does rent include all the utilities, such as gas, electricity, phone, etc.?
Yes, sure. You are only responsible to pay the rent. The lease includes cost for such utilities as gas, heat, water, electricity, and phone.
Great. And what about the internet?
Unfortunately, the internet is not connected. But you shouldn't worry about that. If you wish, you can contact the local providers to set up the connection.
Okay. And what kind of public transport is near the apartment?
It is very close to public transport. Both underground and bus station are about 2 blocks away.
Very good. I think I'll rent this apartment.
Very nice. Could you tell me your full name, please?
Yes. It's John Hooper. Hooper is spelled with double O. H-double-O. Then P-E-R.
Thank you, John. I'm Mary Dixon, and I'll be your apartment manager.
Thank you.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 6 to 10.
Now listen and answer questions 6 to 10.
Now, we need to meet to sign a lease agreement.
Okay. What documents should I bring?
First of all, we require proof of your identity.
Then, I can bring my driving license.
I'm sorry, but driving licenses are not accepted. Could you bring your passport?
Yes, sure. And do you require a tax bill?
No, we're not requiring any bills. But you need to present your current employment contract.
No problem, I have it. Anything else?
Yes, we also need a reference from a friend or colleague, confirming your character.
Okay. And what about a reference from an employer?
We used to ask tenants for this reference a few years ago. But now we don't need it anymore. As well as your recent payslips, they are not required.
Very good. I think I have all the documents. Is it possible to meet you today?
Yes. Is 5:30 p.m. convenient for you?
Unfortunately, I'm busy until 6 p.m.
Then we can meet at 6:30 p.m.
Yes, 6:30 is very good for me. I'll be at your office by that time.
I think it's better to meet directly at your future apartment, because we'll anyway make a visit.
Oh, you're right. See you soon.
Thank you. See you soon.
That is the end of Part 1.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to Part 2. Part 2.
You will hear the information about tickets to one of the royal palaces in London. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 16. As you listen to the first part of the talk, answer questions 11 to 16.
Thank you for deciding to visit historic royal palaces of the United Kingdom. Every year dozens of tourists choose to visit the Tower of London, and we have a variety of tickets to suit your own interests. If you wish to make a single visit, you can buy a single-day ticket. This ticket enables you to visit only the Tower of London. The adult ticket's cost is £24. Children between the ages of 5 and 15 pay £18, and children under 5 can visit the tower for free. For full-time students, 16 years and over, and disabled visitors we offer a reduced tariff. If you have a reduced tariff, you pay only £19. And if you're going to make a visit with your family, it's a good idea to get a family ticket. The family ticket enables you to visit the tower and one other royal palace during one day. It costs £55, and can be used by up to 2 adults and 3 children. For permanent visitors we offer an annual membership. The annual membership provides you unlimited entry to any 5 royal palaces, and costs £107 for both adults and children over 5 years.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions
17 to 20. Now listen, and answer questions 17 to 20.
If you can't wait to visit these famous historical places, and have already chosen your ticket type, then it's time to order tickets. The first and the easiest way is to buy your tickets online. To do this, you should visit our site and select a date, then make a payment. Make sure that after the payment is completed, you receive a confirmation email of your booking. The second way is to book your tickets by telephone. However, you have to pay an additional fee when ordering tickets over the phone. Plus, telephone bookings are not available during the weekends and holidays. So this option is not very convenient. And if you don't want to plan your visit in advance, there is a third option for you. You can simply purchase the tickets in person on the day of your visit. There are plenty of ticket kiosks near the Tower of London and other royal palaces. I hope that you'll enjoy your visit.
The end of part 2.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Listening, Part 3. You will hear 2 health studies students, Lucy and Sam, talking about the topic of vitamin supplements. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 26. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 26.
OK, we've looked at the history of vitamin supplements and thought about why people take them. We've also considered the reasons why some health professionals are critical of the vitamin supplement industry. Now work with a partner and discuss the key issues.
Sam, shall we work together?
Sure. Let's go over the history.
Well, before the 1900s, when someone became weak and tired, and it wasn't clear why, doctors assumed they were suffering from an infection, like a virus.
Or they'd been in contact with something poisonous or harmful, something they'd handled or eaten. Doctors had no other explanation for it.
But in the early 1900s, that changed. That researcher in the US, Joseph Goldberger, He realised people who basically lived off corn, they were getting ill because they weren't eating anything else.
Exactly. And other researchers were realising the same thing. Like in places where people only ate white rice, they were suffering from a disease called beriberi.
So the researchers concluded that there must be something missing, that the stuff some people were eating had no nutritional value. And from there, researchers began to identify vitamins, like A and B, for the first time.
A huge scientific breakthrough.
So doctors, the public, everyone got to hear about vitamins. First, that they existed, and second, you needed them to be healthy.
But it was governments that were really worried about vitamin deficiency, certainly in the US and in the UK at least.
What do you mean?
Well, in the 1930s, those governments were worried about people's general health because everyone was suddenly buying canned fruit, artificial butter, meat in tins, that kind of thing. It became very common. And so newspapers were featuring lots of government reports about how serious this was.
I see.
And then some people saw a business opportunity.
Naturally.
In the 1940s, companies started making and selling vitamin supplements in bottles, and they decided the easiest way to market them was to target housewives.
Why was that? Because housewives were responsible for keeping families healthy?
I'd say so. In the weekly magazines Housewives read, the companies made exaggerated claims about what the supplements could do, and they showed pictures of rats in a laboratory before and after they were given vitamins. The before pictures showed the rats looking very sick.
So they scared the housewives into buying their product?
Apparently.
But vitamins were still expensive, weren't they? It wasn't until the 1950s that more people could afford to buy them.
Why was that?
Well, manufacturers had discovered how to produce vitamins artificially and in enormous quantities in their factories.
I suppose that's what goes on with any product. It starts expensive until manufacturers adapt their technology. Were there any developments in the 1960s?
Companies changed their promotional strategy to increase their sales. They used movie stars to say how effective the supplements were.
That's still true today. Celebrity endorsement really seems to work. Someone on the TV says vitamins have made them healthier, and immediately more consumers go out and buy them.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 27 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 27 to 30.
So apparently, the number of Australians taking vitamin supplements has doubled in the last decade.
Incredible! I suppose so many fitness-related articles recommend them.
I wouldn't say that that's the reason. According to the research I read, many Australians are just taking a more active approach to staying well. They don't want to rely on their doctor for everything, so they're turning to vitamins. They can take those themselves and feel they're doing something positive. So it doesn't have anything to do with the fact the price has dropped because so many companies are making supplements.
I doubt it. Even people in lower socioeconomic groups are buying them, apparently.
Most of my own research has been about the US vitamin supplement industry. Did you know the industry is under no obligation to prove that their supplements actually work? I don't think that's right.
How do you mean?
Well, in the US, the Food and Drug Administration Department regards vitamin supplements as a food. With medicine, manufacturers have to demonstrate that their products really can improve people's health before they go on sale.
But you said vitamins are classed as a food.
Yes, so the industry can sell whatever vitamin supplements they like. You know, this one will improve your brain function, even if there's nothing to support their claims.
That Danish experiment, thousands of people took part in that.
Yes, the scientists wanted to see if high doses of vitamins really could prevent medical problems like heart disease, or just reduce the chances of people getting a simple cold.
But the high-dose people were just as likely to get sick as the people not taking any vitamins. That's not to say that scientists now know everything about vitamins.
No. Like you say, investigations and long-term trials need to continue before they can be certain about what taking vitamin supplements can actually achieve.
But in the meantime, do we need stricter regulation of the supplement industry? Do you think people would stop buying and taking vitamins if they were told it's a waste of time?
Hardly. No one likes being told what they can or can't buy, especially where health is concerned.
Fair enough. I guess if the government made it harder to get certain products, like, say, fish oil with vitamin D, people would protest.
They certainly would. What I think is that they should start to...
That is the end of Part 3. You now have half a minute to check your answers to Part 3. Listening Part 4. You will hear a student giving a presentation about the way that different insect species are being threatened. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
So today, I'm going to be talking about the way that different insect species are being threatened. In other words, the reasons why some insect populations are declining and might even become extinct in the 21st century. I'll also talk about the consequences if extinction occurs and some possible ways to prevent that. Let's start with the reasons. First of all, when we look at what's going on in Europe, we can see a huge decline in certain species of insect. This is partly because farmers no longer allow certain plants to grow in their fields. But farmers are not entirely to blame. The gardens that people have nowadays don't always contain the kind of plant that insects need. So perhaps we need to rethink what we're putting there. In more tropical regions of the world, for example, the Amazon rainforest, scientists have noticed that the number of beetle and butterfly species also appears to be diminishing. They put this down to climate change, rather than, say, the fragmentation of habitat, but more research has to be done. And then there's the use of pesticide. And of course, this happens everywhere in the world. Pesticide is designed to kill a range of insects that farmers don't like. But it also kills bees, which they need. Pesticide might not kill bees directly, but we know that it impacts on their spatial skills, meaning they cannot make sense of what they see around them, and also their memory. This means that they cannot remember how to get back to their hive. So, why worry about whether insects become extinct? Well, the consequences would obviously be terrible, not just for them, but for us. Pretty much everywhere on the planet, with the exception of Antarctica, insects are at the bottom of the food chain. They're absolutely vital, because if there were no insects, there would also be no birds or lizards or mammals. Then there's the role that insects play in crop production. We use them to pollinate our fruit and vegetables, and it would be impossible to manage without them. It's also worth remembering that scientists are now studying plants to find out whether they might be a source of medicine in the future. If these plants disappear because of insect extinction, that would be another lost opportunity. So, there's some possible ways we could prevent insect extinction, some more controversial than others. I think it's a given that governments have to do something about the sale of pesticides. In fact, some countries have already passed laws to ban certain products. That's a good move forward. But ordinary people can also make a difference. If we cut down on how much meat we ate, some of the land now used for grazing could be turned back into insect-friendly environments. I'd like to finish with a positive story. There's a place in California called the Antioch Dunes. In the 1900s, people looked at the dunes and the sand that formed them and thought, that sand is a great raw material. And because they needed to build houses, they removed tons and tons of the sand and turned it into bricks. It wasn't really until the 1960s that biologists suddenly realised that the Antioch Dunes had actually been home to some unique species of plant and insect. But by this time, there was only one species of butterfly left, the metalmark butterfly. And a major problem for the metalmark was that it required a certain plant to survive, something called the naked stem buckwheat. It was on this plant that it laid its eggs, so yes, you can see why the buckwheat was important. Well, in the end, the only way that the biologists could get the buckwheat to start growing properly was to replace the sand. That was a great first step, but the metalmark butterfly is still endangered. In the last decade, a significant number of butterflies and plants have been destroyed in the Antioch Dunes by fire. So now, the biologists are limiting the number of visitors who can wander around the dunes. That's fair enough, I think. All right, the final point I want to make about the project to restore the Antioch Dunes area is to do with how much land is required. When we think about the concept of conservation, we often assume we need to set aside a large amount of it. And that might be true for some large species. But in this case, relatively little land was required. But the important thing is to leave it undisturbed. Okay, now what I want to talk about.
That is the end of part 4. You now have 1 minute to check your answers to part 4.
Be fine if I don't break my limitations. Don't try to stop me, I exist to write my own story. I'll make a decision if I want some peace or if I want the glory, yeah. Don't want a life that is complacent or possibly boring, just want a life that is worth every day exploring,
My whole life I just wanted someone who would notice me. My whole life I just wanted to be somebody to be.